Next to you, we have Nkosinathi Nhleko, who's the Director General in the Department of Labour. Mr. Nhleko, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Welcome. And next to you, Les Keteldas, who's the Deputy Director General, Labour Policy and Industrial Relations. Mr. Keteldas, thank you very much for joining us. And next to you is the Chief Director of Public Employment Services, Ms. Esther Tlwana. Thank you so much also for joining us on the program. All right, perhaps just to set the tone a little bit, and I think the big issue a lot of people are seeing, Minister, and you've talked about it at the beginning of your speech and towards the end, is this adversarial nature between Labour and employers. Would you say that Labour relations, and particularly this year, given what's happening worldwide, we've heard Finance Minister and Reserve Bank Governor say how critical it is for us to make sure that we don't have protracted strikes this year. How do we get over this hill? How do we have peaceful resolutions to these wage negotiations?
I have appealed to both organized business and organized labor to say whatever they must do it within the framework of the law, particularly when it comes to the Labor Relations Act. And we have also encouraged them to have a centralized collective bargaining because after what has happened in Marikana, it's precisely because the companies were negotiating as individual companies. So what has happened is that loanmen gave the increase to their employees, particularly the rock drillers. And immediately after that, the workers who are rock drillers and the amplats also striked to get the same wages as loanmen rock drillers. And after that, at Anglo Gold as well, that's what has happened. And now I think the challenge was that when we talk about the centralized collective bargaining, people were thinking that we will just club all the mining sectors together, and even those who can't afford. But what we've said the platinum industry must sit down and talk together to say when they are paying the rock drillers, they have to agree on how much will be the minimum on the rock drillers. But at the same time, our laws are flexible because when one of the companies can't afford, they can apply for the exemption. But what we will do as the department is that we have to look at them, whether those facts, if they say they won't be able to afford, is it really such conditions? So those are the things that should happen. But at the same time, if there is a deadlock, we are here as the Department of Labor through the CCMA. We can facilitate the processes where those challenges can be solved without even going to strike. So I think what should happen is that workers must know their rights, but also they must recognize that the companies as well, they do have their rights. And I have appealed to both employers and the employees that when they are acting within the law, so every company, I believe, they have their own company policies. That also lays the foundation on what will happen if somebody is behaving on the negative way. So they must respect both the labor relations of the country, and they must also respect their own company policies.
Okay, DG, I'm hearing what the Minister is saying, and a lot of it makes sense. But I'm thinking, and I'm going to put my hat on perhaps as an employer, and I'm getting a sense that perhaps there's a lot of more legislation that as an employer I'm going to have to wade through. Once you set a minimum wage and I comply with that, surely that's the end of the story.
Firstly, let me just make a broad general point, maybe to add on to some of the points that the Minister has put forward. I think that the flare-ups, as we have them in the mining sector, for an example, should not necessarily define the nature and character, broadly speaking, of collective bargaining in South Africa. By so saying, I'm saying that's just simply a flare-up in one specific sort of area. By and large, South Africa is made up of two interest parties, the employer and the employees, and it has an excellent culture of negotiation. So the culture of collective bargaining in South Africa is pretty established and so on. The fact that we have had these kinds of flare-ups should not necessarily be interpreted to then bedevil the entire broader spectrum of collective bargaining as a concept and culture in the South African context.
Okay, I'm going to move to you, Deputy DG. And I'm wondering, this adversarial nature of between Labour and employees, how much are the unions contributing to this? And I'm just an observer outside looking in, and it's been my experience where there's a lot of money, there's a lot of activity and politics perhaps that go beyond just the issues of the guy on the rock face. Do you see, or are you concerned perhaps that this infighting between unions and union activity might be contributing to the problem?
Well, first of all, I think that if we want to move towards sound labor relations at the workplace level, it is important that we look at the context within which these collective bargaining initiatives take place, the processes that lead up to the negotiations. It's very important that an environment is created whereby there's a sharing of information. A lot of the adversarialism is caused by the lack of disclosure of information, particularly by both sides. You have, in some sectors, you have pre-bargaining conferences, as an example, where each of the parties sketch out the context within which they are going to negotiate, what are the constraints that they face on both sides, where are the areas of commonality between what business expects and what labor expects. And once you have an environment like that, the parameters within which the negotiations then take place are clearly defined, and people can then move through that within a peaceful process. The issue of more than one union in one place should not be the cause of the adversarialism that we see. Many of the sectors where there is established collective bargaining taking place have more than one union negotiating. You take the metal engineering industry, there are quite a number of unions that are operating there, negotiating. In the other bargaining councils, the motor retail sector, you have the same situation. And you don't see this kind of adversarialism there, but what makes those ones different is that they have these pre-bargaining arrangements where they sketch out the parameters, they sketch out the contexts, and then they can get into the negotiation process. Mm-hmm. So it's very important that an environment is created for that. What also contributes to a sound labor relations environment is that you don't, once every 3 years, come with wage demands, knock each other for 2 to 3 months. When there's a settlement, you walk away, and then you only talk again in 3 years' time. There's got to be processes and mechanisms for ongoing social dialogue to take place, for people to understand the business, to understand the environment within which the business operates, the sector in which it operates.
You're very lucid, you're saying the right things, and I think everybody knows what ought to be done. The issue is, why isn't it?
Well, I think that leadership problems, and I would suggest even on both sides. At management level, I think there's also leadership problems, particularly at the shop floor level. Okay. That those at the shop floor level is to understand also the context and the environment within which they operate, The same on the union side. Shop floor leadership, shop floor organization has got to be strengthened. Shop floor leadership has got to be kept up to date with developments within the company, within the environment, so that there's a better understanding of the issues that are at hand. And training plays an important part on both sides. Shop steward training and development is important, as well as shop floor management is also important that ongoing training happens there.
All right, and just before we go to the floor and get some of these questions, perhaps, Mr. Tlwane, if you could just tell us what the role of the Public Employment Services is so that we can just get a good context.
Thank you very much. In Public Employment Services, we are responsible for the registration of work seekers, registration of opportunities by employers. We're also responsible for providing employment counseling to unemployed people as and when there are suitable opportunities that they are better prepared for those interviews. We are also responsible for the regulation of the private employment agencies, and we also manage the international cross-border labor migration. As and when employers are unable to get suitable people into the country, they are brought into the country through the private employment agencies, having worked together with the Department of Home Affairs. And we also render special services to people with disabled.
Okay, all right. Well, let's go straight to our tables now because we've got a number of questions here. Let's start on table number 1, Steve Harris. Steve Harris, your question.
Thank you, Peter. Minister, we find in our circumstances, we're experiencing that the compensation fund seems to be in disarray at this point in time. In such a situation that our members, when they're injured on duty, the compensation after doctors and hospitals are refusing to treat them. This to us is very serious. Employers are paying towards that fund, and we need to seriously sort this out, as we cannot continue under these circumstances. And we would like to know what you are doing from your side as far as that's concerned.
Okay, Minister.
On that particular issue, we have discussed the issue of how are we going to turn around the challenges that are faced with in the compensation fund. And I have also instructed the Director General and the Compensation Commissioner, Mr. Mkondo, to try and look at the possibility of using the system that is being used at the present moment by the Rand Mutual, because we believe that the challenges in the compensation fund is the system that we're using. So I believe that probably in 6 months' time, everything will go well, but those issues are going to be discussed with the stakeholders as a whole. So I believe that after that, that's when we can say at the same time, in terms of the progress, what we have done, and then where our other challenges are.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Let's go to table number 6, Pelelani. Table number 6.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning to the Minister. Minister, I would like to know that in 2012, the ILO, in conjunction with the Department of the Minister, we were at Beechwood, and there are resolutions that we're taking in terms of young people being employed. And I'm glad to see Chief Director Esther, who was part of my commission there. And whatever that we have resolved, we haven't seen it happening because young people are still not absorbed into the economic system. And one of the things that we spoke about was that we have dilapidated schools in Soweto, and young people, that's where they are taking drugs, that's where they are using such facilities so that they can misbehave. So we wanted to know, or rather I would like to know, when are we going to see the resolutions that were taken being implemented? I thank you.
Okay.
Can I
Yes.
ask the DG first to respond
Yes.
on that? and also the public employment services.
Okay.
And then I will sum up after
All
that.
right.
Thanks.
DG?
In fact, I was okay.
Okay, Ms. Tluane, you can start actually.
Yes, thank you very much. The resolutions that were taken last year are implemented on a regular basis. Like I mentioned earlier on, to say that the registration of work seekers and registration of opportunities is an ongoing solution. And what we are doing currently in public employment services is to ensure that the opportunities that are being registered by the employers are successfully filled by the people that are on our database, are filled by those young people. Hence, we are providing employment counseling to those people that they are better prepared for them to be able to compete in the opportunities that are available.
If I may come in,
Yeah.
what we're doing as the department is that we have now a partnership with the Department of Higher Education and Training, because most of the youth doesn't have qualification. And we have said within the department system, we have, when we register the young people, we identify the skills that are needed, and also we counsel the young people to say, this is where you can have an opportunity. And those who are willing to be retrained, we do so. And I must indicate that as we speak, we are recruiting 3,000 people who are going to be trained on the ICT through the Unemployment Insurance Fund, because we thought that if we train those young people, then we can absorb them so that they can form part of our communication department in saying, what is the department we're doing? So that 3,000 young people will be absorbed by the department. But at the same time, we have partnership with other institutions, for example, like SAMSA and IMDH, in particular when they need the young people who are going to be trained as cadets. And they have said they need people who have at least engineering qualification, but at the same time, they want the young people that are going to be trained on the same skills. So we have signed the MOU with them, and both ourselves and the Department of Higher Education and Training, we are going to pay for those young people to be trained for those specific jobs. And when they are being trained, they will be absorbed by the very same institutions that we're talking about. And I think that is why I was saying, maybe the DG must talk to that. Because even yesterday we were approached by another company, of which we can't disclose it now, up until we have signed the MOU with that particular company. So there is a progress that we're making. But at the same time, in other departments as well, there are training that are taking place. But at the same time, we also encourage the young people to form cooperatives or to train as entrepreneurs, so that at the end of the day, they can also be the employers themselves. So that's what we are doing. But at the same time, we are targeting as well the young people to be trained, particularly because there is a program of the infrastructure in this particular country that has started, and we believe that if we absorb the young people in those particular sectors, then we can be able to say this is what we've done. But now and again, I think, DG, we need to communicate exactly what is it that is happening on the ground. Thanks.
DG, very briefly.
No, I think I'm covered.
Oh, you're done, I think. Okay, but we'll have to hear. Table number 5, is that Ria Mulupiane?
My name is Ria Mulupiane, independent labor consultant. The Minister, my question is to you, and I want to know, given the strikes that we had in the mining sector and in the farm workers, I want to know if there is a Deputy Minister in the Department of Labor, and if there is what is in place in terms of dealing with the challenges that are in the industry, because we have seen that there are concurrent strikes and the minister is at the other hand, and the other hand there are other strikes. So my question is there a Deputy Minister of Labour?
Unfortunately, the Department of Labour doesn't have the Deputy Minister, but the officials that you are sitting with there are employed in the Department of Labour, and they are my deputies, and even the panelists here, these are my deputies, because whenever there's something, I say, DG, can you send somebody to do 1, 2, 3? It depends of the nature of that particular program, and then immediately those people will be sent. Thank you very much.
Okay, some tweets that are coming through here. One person asks, does the department observe what the labor brokers are paying in terms of the salaries to their employees? Are they, because there seems to be a gap, and I think this is one of the big issues. Is this something that the department, do you even have authority or the power to check the gap to see what the labor brokers are paying their employees vis-a-vis what they're being paid by the employers?
Yes, Peter, through the Inspection and Enforcement Services, inspectors visit workplaces. Now, in particular sectors, there are minimum wages and conditions prescribed. The Minister publishes that after a sectoral determination has been made. And where the inspectors do find that an employee is not paid the correct wages or salary, then the inspector would secure an undertaking from the employer to correct that. Firstly, to pay whatever wages had been underpaid, but secondly, for that employer to pay the correct wages. So that there is a process. The inspectors do this on an ongoing basis. And there's no distinction, for example, between what foreign workers earn and what local nationals are earning. There should be no discrimination on the basis of where you come from or by whom you had been placed in employment.
Okay. All right. So table number 1, Patrick Ntuli. Table number 1, Patrick Ntuli.
Thank you, Peter. Minister, you seem not to be supportive about the labor brokers. In fact, you seemingly want to regulate. And we thought, as labor, that the banning of it should be the right way. Can I check from you as to how is the country going to gain out of doing that, considering that the employers may get some ways and means to override the process if you do regulate them? Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks very much for the question. The reason why we are regulating is that we have seen the challenges on the labor broking, the abusive challenges. Now, to ban them, we have private employment agencies, and these people that we call them labor brokers are temporal employment agencies. And we must link that with the subcontracting and outsourcing. Because when you look at the outsourcing and subcontracting, that work is for a certain period of time. And therefore, that is why you have temporal employment agencies. And that is why we are saying, rather than to ban, because today they can be temporal employment agencies, but tomorrow they can go and register as private employment agencies. So I think what we need to look at the cause of these abusive tendencies that are within the temporal employment agencies. And therefore, we are saying whether you are a temporal employment agency, whenever you employ, because that's what they claim, they are saying they employ. We're saying wherever you are, you call yourself an employer, you must employ every worker in terms of the Labor Relations Act, in terms of the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, and in terms of the bargaining agreement within that particular industry, including the sectoral determination. So by doing so, we are changing the way the issue of temporal services have been dealt with. Because at the end of the day, whenever you talk about those things, it also addresses the issue of the salaries of the temporal workers. Because the company will say, I need 10 engineers. And in terms of the company policy, those engineers are earning, let's say, about 10,000 rands. But when you look at those who will be supplied by the temporal employment agency, they will be earning 50% less than those who are permanent. That is why we are saying in the employment equity, we need to have equal pay for the equal work of the same value. That is why we are having those amendments before Parliament.
Minister, isn't there a direct relationship between labor legislation and the growth in the labor brokers? So that perhaps maybe the issue is looking at the legislation that's caused the explosion of labor brokers.
As long as we still have outsourcing and subcontracting, that's where the challenge is.
Okay, Patrick, I hope that answered your question. Let's go to table number 11, Ms. Fusi Magasane.
Morning, Minister. Morning, everyone.
Morning.
My name is Fusi Florence Magasane. I'm a deputy chair lady of South African Networking for Women in Transport. Minister, in the public transport, we have a problem of workers that we are employing, especially in the townships, whereby the taxis are ranking. The drug abuse seems to be getting into that industry in a fast manner. That is the cause of that, as the research that was done by South African Networking for Women in Transport, is that when communities having problems of children who are using substance, they just think of getting them the driver's license and pushing them to the public transport job, which is, they don't see the bigger picture of accidents that are happening in our countries that are caused by those laborers of drivers that we are hiring. In your programs, do you have anything that can incentivize and encourage young women who are getting grants to be encouraged to come on board and be drivers of those public transport, instead of getting the grants, doing something about their lives? I was encouraged by the lady from Nigeria last week when she was doing the program of engineering to 5,000 women that were getting grant, taking them away from the grants and the abuse of substance. Thank you.
All right. Is that something that your department can even engage with?
No, I'm certain we can possibly look into how we, through our programs, particularly within the context of the public employment services, how we can actually partner up around some of those particular programs. But we do not have a specific program that says we will attract women and make them drivers, for an example, in the public transport sector. That doesn't exist. However, I think it is a valid point that would have to be looked into in terms of ourselves going forward and working in partnership with the different sort of stakeholders, for an example, in terms of how we can come in and assist insofar as that particular area of work is concerned.
All right. Table number 8, Julia. Table number 8, Julia.
I would like to know that, does the Employment Equity Act include women reservations in jobs?
Employment Equity Act. Does that include women reservations in jobs? Reservations for women getting jobs? Okay, who wants to address that?
Okay.
The Employment Equity Act requires that workplaces have employment equity plans. In the plan, they would set out numerical targets for people with disabilities, for women, and for young people, and black people in particular, and women. So within the equity plans, there would be a provision for, or targets for employment of women, and black women in particular, in a particular workplace. So there are no prescriptions in the law as to how many, what percentage of women or people with disabilities or young people should be set aside in the plans. That is by agreement reached at the workplace level. And when employers do prepare these equity plans, the law requires that there is consultation with workers or the trade unions at that level. So there are no particular quotas set out in the law.
All right. Table number 13, is that Luyolo Katan? If you could just correct that, I'm trying to read your writing.
Thank you, Peter.
Yep.
Minister, my question is, I would like to know if you'll still consider the possibility of deploying a peacekeeping force to the mining industry if we experience another flare of violence due to union rivalry and wage disputes. Thank you.
Peacekeeping force.
Yeah, that one I said, if there is a need, but I will report back to the Deputy President, of which that I have done. And the Deputy President has met with the Peace and Stability Cluster to discuss those issues. And a follow-up meeting, I think the Deputy President will be convening. And then that's where the Deputy President will say, this is what we will be doing in terms of piecing, of keeping peace in the mining sector industry.
This winner-takes-all scenario, is that not contributing to the problem? Because now we're getting people fighting over offices and not actual issues that the workers on the rock face are dealing with.
I think that one, it is based on Section 18 of the Labor Relations Act. The unions has raised that, and even the organized business has raised that. And we have indicated to them that that legislation is before Parliament. Since it was not part of the amendments, but they have the right to go and do the presentation before the committees in Parliament to say we want to amend this particular section, of which now those particular amendments are part and parcel of the public to decide on how the legislation should look like. So whoever is having a concern on that particular section, they can go and do the presentation before the committees of Parliament.
All right, okay. We're going to take a quick break now. And when we come back, we'll start to...